I'll tell you a local story. It has to do with this temple. This is called Sukateshwar Mahadev, or the place where Shukadev Goswami worshipped Lord Shiva. It's said that when Lord Shiva and Parvati came here, at that time there was no internet, there was no cable television.
Really?
Things were very primitive. The entertainment that they had was a much better kind of entertainment. It's an entertainment of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. In Orissa, there's a great tradition of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. In practically every village, traditionally, there's one small building they call the Bhagavat Tungi. And every night, before television came, now things are a little different. But it used to be that everybody would gather together every night to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Sometimes other Puranic stories, and they would do kirtan and things together. And that was their entertainment. So Parvati and Lord Shiva were here in Bhubaneswar alone. And they gathered together under one mango tree. Some people say it's called a Kamrakanan because there was only one mango tree, very big mango tree. Others say there were many mango trees. I wasn't here. I don't know. It's called a Kamrakanan. So Lord Shiva, he was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Parvati. And Parvati was listening very attentively. She had taken some courses perhaps in the university in attentive listening. So prior to all of this, Krishna and Srimati Radharani had left this world. Their pastimes had become unmanifest. So Srimati Radharani had one parrot. And that parrot was very dear to her. The parrot would sit on her left hand. And Srimati Radharani would feed the parrot pomegranate seeds. And she would tell the parrot, Krishna Bol, Krishna Bol. And then the parrot would chant Krishna's name in a very sweet way. And Radharani got great pleasure. And she would give the parrot pomegranates then, when the parrot would recite Krishna's name. Or sometimes this parrot was not an ordinary parrot. He would recite the pastimes of Krishna. So when Radha and Krishna finished their manifest pastimes in this world, they told that parrot, you stay behind. So the parrot was very unhappy. He wanted to have association with Radha and Krishna. And then someone told him, hey, in Bhubaneswar, in Ekam Rakanan, Lord Shiva is speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Parvati. Yes. So the parrot came here and he flew into a tree, maybe just like this. And parrots are very green in color. So he hid himself in the leaves. He was watching. Now Parvati was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So she was listening to Lord Shiva speaking Bhagavatam, and she was listening very attentively. Like this. But it was first canto Bhagavatam, second canto Bhagavatam, third canto Bhagavatam, judging time by the atom, very fascinating subject matter. And Parvati Devi started falling asleep. And Lord Shiva noticed after a few minutes that Parvati was sleeping. But something was going on. The sound was still coming. And Lord Shiva's looking, who is making that sound? And then he looked in the tree. And there was a parrot. He was a very eager parrot to hear Krishna Katha. And he was making that sound because he understood, if I don't keep making the sound, then Lord Shiva will stop. So he kept making the sound. So then Lord Shiva, who's also known, he's known as Ashutosh, he's very easily pleased. And he has different expansions called Rudras. Rudra means very angry. And he can become a very angry fellow. You don't want to make Lord Shiva angry. So he became angry because Srimad Bhagavatam is Paramahamsa Sanghita. It's not really meant for everyone. it's meant especially for those devotees who are nirmatsaranam satam devya, who are nirmatsaranam satam, who is situated on the platform of non-enviousness. If we want to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, we have to be free from envy. So Lord Shiva didn't know this parrot. He thought maybe he escaped from the zoo or something. He didn't know. He picked up his trishula and he started chasing the parrot. The parrot started flying away. The parrot was not afraid. The Bhagavatam describes, first canto, chapter 7, Shoka, Moha, Bhayapaha. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments in this verse. He says that this describes the external symptoms of someone who hears Srimad Bhagavatam. It's Shok, Moha, Bhaya. Fear, lamentation, illusion, they all go away if you're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So Lord Shiva became upset, started chasing the bird. The bird wasn't afraid. He was just disappointed because there was no more Krishna Katha. He stopped. So he was flying north to the Himalayan mountains to a place called Badrik Ashram. And there in Badrik Ashram, someone had told him that Srila Vyasadeva was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to his wife. Srila Vyasadeva's wife was also a good listener of the Bhagavatam. She was completely astonished to hear this amazing literature. And as Vyasadeva was speaking to her, she was listening like this. Her mouth was wide open. She was completely astonished. And meanwhile, that bird came flying with Lord Shiva running after him with the trident. And the bird came there. The Mataji had her mouth wide open, and the bird flew inside of her mouth. It gets more far out. And the bird entered into her womb, and that bird became known as Shukadeva Goswami. And therefore the Srimad Bhagavatam begins by stating Sri Shuk Uvacha. Sri means blessed. Sri Shuk Uvacha, the blessed Shukadeva Goswami spoke. But Sri Shuk has another meaning. Shuk also means parrot. And Sri means Sarva Angsani Radhika. So it also means the parrot of Radharani spoke. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita there's an interesting verse which is spoken by Lord Shiva about the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it has to do with this place we're at right now. He said, Aham Vedmi, I understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Shuka Vedi, Shukadeva Goswami understands Srimad Bhagavatam because he heard it from me. And he says, Vyasa Vedi na Vedi va. Whether Vyasa understands or not, I don't know. Not such an easy thing to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Whether Vyasadeva understands or not, I don't know. One meaning of that is because it's such an elevated book. Another meaning of that is that I don't know if Vyasa understands or not because he didn't hear from me. But Shukadeva Goswami heard directly from Lord Shiva. And then he says, Bhaktya Bhagavatam Grayam na Buddhaya na Chatikaya. Here at this place we should say something a little bit in glorification and appreciation of Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. How do we understand Srimad Bhagavatam? It said there that Bhaktya Bhagavatam Grayam na Buddhaya na Chatikaya. You cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam by your intelligence. Also mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat. Mahaprabhu came to Bhubaneswar and he had darshan of all the Shiva deities, but it's not mentioned which particular deities. There's only one temple that's clearly mentioned, and that's this temple. Lingaraj. Mahaprabhu was dancing here in this courtyard, and maybe he's dancing here right now. I think so. So this deity is a very interesting deity, and I'd like to say something about his identity, which will help us to come through the doorway that we want to go to Jagannath Puri. Who is this deity? He's Lingaraj. He's the king of all the lingas. You may know in the Linga Purana, Shiva Purana, it's mentioned that Dvadas Linga, 12 different important lingas. This one is not one of them. 12 most important Shiva lingas in India, this is not one of them. Rather, this one is considered to be the king of all of them. And so Hindus from all over India, they come here and they worship him. Shaivites worship him. But also there's many Vishnu Bhaktas who come here and worship him. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came here and worshipped him. In the Skanda Purana, there's an interesting description about Indradyumna Maharaj. Narad Muni was bringing him to Jagannath Puri. And on the way he said, well, wait a minute, we have to stop here first. You can't go into Jagannath Puri unless you worship this Shiv Linga. Now, Indradyumna Maharaj, she's one of the early Hare Krishna devotees. I'm not talking about our ISKCON Indradyumna Maharaj, she's also an early Hare Krishna devotee. But this is the original Indradyumna Maharaj, it's a few million years ago. And he was thinking, like probably a lot of us, I'm not into Lord Shiva, what is this? I want to worship Krishna. But Narad Muni told him, so okay, I have to. So he started worshiping the deity, and then it's described, after he took a bath, he came to worship this deity. Lingam Tribhubanesham Tam Mahasnanena Pujayan Atulam Pritimalevi Vishnu Advaita Darshanaha. After he took his holy bath, most likely in Bindu Sarovar, Indradyumna Maharaj came here to worship Lord Shiva, and he saw, wait a minute, Vishnu Advaita Darshanaha. This is also my Lord Vishnu. How many of you have been to the temple of Harihara in Navadvip? Raise your hand. Okay. So this is also a deity of Harihara. And I'll give you some evidence. On top of the temple, which you can't see from this angle, there's a Trishula, the symbol of Lord Shiva. And there's also a chakra, the symbol of Lord Vishnu. In Shiva temples, they have a Brisha Stamba. Brisha means a bull. It's Nandi. In Vishnu temples, there's a Garuda Stamba. In this temple, there's a big Brisha Stamba. And right next to him is a Garuda. And as we were mentioning, some Pujari, he's explaining to us that inside this linga, there's a Shalagam Shila. And therefore, when they offer puja, they offer bhoga to him, they do it with Gopal mantra. Very, very unusual. So this temple, another interesting few things about it, they say this was a, there's a word for it, Spatika Linga, that if you touched iron to it, it would turn to gold. And the Pandits were very fond of him. They were becoming very wealthy, and then the Lord saw this wasn't good, and he told the king, stop this. So the king covered him over. And he made this big giant linga there, and this other linga is supposed to be underneath. Now, this temple is 65 feet high. The walls are 7.5 feet thick on the bottom. This is the second largest temple in all of Orissa. The first largest temple is the Jagannath Mandir in Puri. When Kalapahad came here, we told you the unpleasant story about Kalapahad, the Muslim who came to break the temples. When he came here, he started breaking things, and he said, hey, what's in this big temple room here? And they knew Kalapahad was coming, so they put a bunch of straw in there over the linga. And they said, oh, that's where we keep the straw for our cows. So Kalapahad looked inside, and he saw a bunch of straw. He said, okay, apparently Kalapahad's not so intelligent. Except, yeah, they built this giant temple to keep straw for the cows. Cows are very important to Hindus. So he didn't break the linga. So we can understand a few different ways people saw this linga. So many different conceptions are there about Lingaraj Mahadev. The Hindus worship him as Lingaraj, the king of all the Shiv lingas. Some people see him as Harihara. Some people see a Shalagam Shila inside of him. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came to Bhubaneswar on his last trip, he arrived at the train station, same train station you came to. He got down off the train and immediately he fell down on the ground and offered obeisances and began to recite a prayer. Vrindavana Banipate Jaya Soma Soma Mole Sanandana Sanatana Nada Deja Gopishwara Braja Bilasi Yugangri Padne Prema Prayacha Nirupari Namo Namaste. This is a verse written by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and it's a prayer to Gopishwar Mahadev. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said that this deity of Lingaraj is Gopalini, is Gopishwar, who grants entrance into Vrindavan. So it's a long story. We're going to explore it further. Why Mahaprabhu came to Jagannath Puri when he wants to go to Vrindavan. The skinny, short answer is that Jagannath Puri is Gupta Vrindavan. It's a hidden Vrindavan. And so therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, before he went to Jagannath Puri, he first came here and had darshan of Lingaraj, who's none different from Gopishwar Mahadev. Gopishwar Mahadev grants one entrance into Vrindavan. So before he went to Puri, he came here. And we also want to do the same thing. And we want to pray to Lord Shiva in that way. Oh my dear Gopishwar Mahadev, you grant entrance into Vrindavan. You please grant us entrance into that Vrindavan of Jagannath Puri. May we see Vrindavan there. This is our prayer.